Well, good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's Last Post ceremony. My name is Richard Cruz, and joining us today from the Australian Army is Corporal Jeanette McNeely. We're honoured to acknowledge Vice Admiral Thomas Moore, Commander, Naval Sea Systems Command, United States of America, and the accompanying naval delegation. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that love and support them. We acknowledge the members of RSL Services Clubs Association, RSL Victoria and RSL Queensland, who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection by visitors and students on behalf of Camberwell South Primary School, Glen Iris, Victoria. I invite you all to please stand and join in singing the National Anthem. If you're able, please be seated. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight we'll read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 102,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and operations for more than a century. But first we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths and floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection.
Today, we remember and pay tribute to Stanley Vivian Beardwood. Stanley Beardwood was born on the 18th of March 1909 in Launceston, Tasmania, the third son of Matthew and Henriette Beardwood. Young Stanley grew up with his siblings, Jack, Doris, Les and Bob, at Prospect at the southern end of Launceston. After receiving his qualifying certificate from Wellington Square Practising School in 1924, he went on to work as a dairy farmer with his father. He also served with the cadets for 2 years. By the beginning of the Second World War, Beardwood had married Louisa Alice Creedy. He enlisted on the 17th of December 1940 and was allotted to the 2nd 40th Battalion, the only battalion in the Australian Imperial Force recruited almost entirely from Tasmania. In early January 1941, Beardwood and his battalion went to Bongilia Camp near Wodonga on the New South Wales-Victorian border to join its parent brigade. In February 1941, the battalion was earmarked for deployment to Dutch West Timor to protect the airfields in the event of a Japanese attack. However, it was thought premature deployment might provoke Japanese action, and the battalion was held back in the Northern Territory. During this time, Beardwood was absent without leave for 2 days and forfeited 3 days' pay as a result. Once Japanese attacks began in early December 1941, the 2nd 40th Battalion was rushed to Timor. Leaving Darwin on the 10th of December, the battalion formed the bulk of Sparrow Force, which defended the airfield at Penfui, the operational base for the Hudson bombers of 2 Squadron, Royal Australian Air Force. Like the other bird forces deployed across the islands to Australia's north, Sparrow Force was ill-equipped. The commanding officer, Lieutenant Colonel William Leggett, made repeated requests for greater reinforcements of artillery and supplies, which were never met. Japanese air attacks on Timor began in late January and increased in intensity over the next month. 2 Squadron withdrew to Australia on the 19th of February, leaving doubts about the role of Sparrow Force. The Japanese attack on Dutch Timor began the following morning. Faced with a strong advance from the south and paratroopers on the only road running inland to the Allied supply dump, Sparrow Force destroyed the airfield and began to move inland. Over the following days, the small force battled its way along the road, overcoming several Japanese positions. By the morning of the 23rd of February, however, the odds against Sparrow Force were mounting. Food, water and ammunition were running out. Casualties were mounting, and the large Japanese force was closing on the rear. After the Japanese delivered Leggett an ultimatum to surrender or be bombed, the bulk of the 2nd 40th, including Private Beardwood, became prisoners of war. The prisoners spent the first 7 months of their captivity interned in a camp at Yusapa Bazaar on Timor. A small party of senior officers was shipped to Java in late July, and the rest of the prisoners on Timor followed in September. From Java, the 2nd 40th prisoners were dispersed throughout Japan's conquered territory. In Australia, Beardwood's family waited anxiously for news. Initially reported as missing, it wasn't until August 1943 that he was reported as being interned at Java. It would be almost another 2 years until Beardwood's death was confirmed, with reports that he died of malaria on the 11th of October at Taso in Thailand, a Japanese staging camp for prisoners moving north to work on the railway construction. Stanley Beardwood was 34 years old. Today, his remains lie buried at Kanchanaburi War Cemetery in Thailand, underneath the inscription, aged 34, dearly loved and sadly missed by loving wife Louis. His name is listed on the roll of honour on my left, amongst more than 40,000 Australians who died while serving in the Second World War. A photograph of his headstone is displayed today beside the pool of reflection. This is but one of many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Private Stanley Vivian Beardwood, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the reading of the ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them.
Lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozières or in the low scrub at Gallipoli with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that concludes this evening's last post ceremony. We thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial and wish you all a very good evening. Thank you.